Welcome to the Dibley Diaries for this week. This week we're thinking about the John 14 passage where Jesus says, I go and prepare a place for you. I go and prepare a place for you. So I've been really thinking about that and about our churches, and I've been thinking about how do we prepare our church buildings and our church worship services as places where people can come and be welcomed in and feel that we have prepared for them to be there. So it could be as simple things. Do we have large print orders of service? Do we have large print hymn books for people that need them? Do we have accessible church buildings so that people who have mobility problems can actually get into the building and get into the church services in a sensible and simple way? Do we have that provision ready for people? Do we have people who are going to say welcome to people, who are going to say, oh, come in and sit anywhere, and those people are going to mean sit anywhere? Or maybe we might have people who would say welcome and suggest a place to sit. This could be a really good place for you to sit, or why don't you sit here? That'd be great. And actually be welcoming, be prepared to welcome people in to our church services and our church worship. There are so many times and examples of places where this might have gone wrong. I think in particular of time when I've been at a service in a church building where someone came in a wheelchair and they were asked to have their wheelchair in one place, and then before the service began they were asked to have their wheelchair in another place, and then they were asked to have their wheelchair in a third place, all in the 15 minutes before the service began, and they did not feel welcomed by that. And one place, I've talked about this before, I think, where I went to look at the church notice board outside the church building to find out what services were happening, to see if we could join in with those church services, and there was no notice up. I couldn't find a notice anywhere which said, actually, the church services are at this time and we'd be pleased to welcome you. Didn't feel, so that preparation hadn't happened. In the end, we didn't end up going to that church, but to a different nearby church. So all these things are important. How, when people are thinking about coming into our church worship, how are we preparing a place for them to come and join with us? In Thought for the Week, this week we're thinking about this passage. So it's John chapter 14, the beginning of that, and it's the bit where Jesus says, in my Father's house there are many rooms or dwelling places, or in the old translations, mansions, and I go and prepare a place for you. I go and prepare a place for you. What is it like to have a place prepared for you? What would you choose to have if someone was preparing a place for you? I mean, important celebrities and stars often have something which is called a rider, which is in their contract, and it says, oh, I want this in the dressing room and this in the dressing room, or in the place where they're going to be, or in the green room, and I want to have this and I want to have that. So I don't know any celebrities who have a rider. Someone I know who, when he's going to speak at an event, one of his team often makes sure that there are Percy Pig sweets available for him to have before he speaks, which generally appreciated by the whole team. And someone has admitted that they do occasionally in the team put that on if he's going to speak to someone. They're like, oh yes, please buy some Percy Pigs for it. Not something that he necessarily chose, but something which he does appreciate. But what would we have on our rider, and what do we expect Jesus is doing, preparing a place for us? What is it going to be like preparing to go to heaven? We at our one of our home groups this week had quite a long discussion about heaven and about what the images about it are. We had thoughts about how time doesn't apply in heaven. And one person who was there said, "But I'm not sure I really want to be singing Amazing Grace for 20,000 years." That's what kind of led to the time discussion. Because we don't really know what heaven is like. And we don't know really what it's going to be like to go there or what we need there. It's interesting when we think about the images of heaven, especially those in Revelation. Sometimes they're really hard to understand. You know, the crystal seas and the thrones and all those different things. You know, the washing the robes in the blood of the Lamb so they're sparkling white, and all those sorts of things. They're difficult for us to understand, difficult for us to access. They're just ways of thinking about heaven. And we think about images of heaven in the Old Testament. You might think about Psalm 23, about there being a feast, the idea of heaven as a feast. So it's all something which is good, it's something which is plenteous. And also when we think about heaven, we think about in Revelation how God will wipe away every tear from our eyes, and about that image of wholeness, that is that heaven is a place full of wholeness. It's hard for us to contemplate the reality of heaven because we can't comprehend it. We have lived our lives in a very time and limited way here on earth, and to be in a place beyond time and beyond all the limitations and beyond pain and beyond suffering, that is a really hard thing for us to grasp. So that's why people use these different images of heaven. That's why people use these different images of heaven. And so Jesus says, well, I'll go and prepare a place for you, and you will know the way. And that's a difficult question. That's a difficult thing for us to think about. Sometimes when I'm thinking about this passage, I think about the U2 song, which is Walk On. It's quite an old song now, but it has a line in it which goes something like, you're packing a suitcase for a place no one has been, a place that has to be believed to be seen. And sometimes I think about that lyric and I think, well, it's true, isn't it, that what would we be packing in our suitcase for heaven? But we have no idea what we should be putting in it, what we should be taking with us. And as I've been reflecting on that this week, I've been thinking, well, we don't need to pack anything when we're going to heaven, because Jesus is preparing the place for us. Everything that we need for heaven, Jesus will sort out for us. Jesus is preparing a place for us. And what about how to get there? I love this bit where Thomas says, because Jesus says, you know the way to the place where I'm going. And Thomas says, no, Lord, I don't know the way. And then Jesus says, I am the way and the truth and the life. So Jesus is sorting out how to get there as well. So not only do we not need to pack, and as an elderly wise relative of mine used to say, there are no pockets in shrouds. We don't need to pack because Jesus is preparing a place. And we don't need to know the way because Jesus says, I am the way, the truth and the life. So he will sort that out as well. We're going to a place where we don't need to pack. And we don't need to know any more of the way than knowing Jesus is taking us there. And that's a great thing to remember when we're thinking about heaven. The Dibley moment for the week. This week is a very lovely Dibley moment. It's something that happened to me many years ago now, where I was going to stay with someone, and it had been a really, really long journey, and they were so welcoming for me. They were lovely, and just as we were going to bed, it was winter where I was, they said, I made you a hot water bottle because, you know, it's really good to have a hot water bottle when you're in a new bed for the first time. So here you are, this will help you settle in. And they had prepared for my visit so beautifully, and just the thoughtfulness of having that hot water bottle made a huge difference to me, and I was just felt so welcomed, and that they prepared for me in such a brilliant way. So yeah, a small hot water bottle showed real care and love in preparation for my visit. And that's it for the Dibley Diaries for this week. I pray that you and your village, however large or small, have a really blessed week, where you can be reassured that Jesus is preparing a place for you.